Thank you for joining us in Finding God in Video Games. In today's Rewind, we're taking a look back at the very first Assassin's Creed title. We're going all the way back. And look at this thing. Templar Knights, got them. Group of assassins who promote peace on Earth through selective violence, check. Real-world locations, actual historical figures, sharp blade in the place of my character's amputated finger, check, check, check. As I sat down in front of Assassin's Creed that first time, and I jumped into the shoes of an acrobatic, highly skilled death dealer who also happens to be saving humanity from tyranny through each assassination contract completed, I was floored. I was blown away. I was really swept up into it. And the beauty of the game is that I was not just some mere murderer. No, I was tasked with the elimination of only the critical characters in history that would do harm to others on a grander scale. In a way, I was kind of a hitman who aims to rid the world of violence through proactive prevention. Somebody just put some paradox in my peanut butter. But as I continued to play, I found it disturbing that I could actually start to rationalize this concept within the gaming experience, especially as a Christian. We're commanded to simply turn the other cheek, right? Pray and God will sort everything out. So how do I justify these two seemingly very different concepts? I figured I was kind of in uncharted waters, but to my surprise, not only does the Bible have much to say on the subject, but I found that an even more remarkable tale took place many thousands of years prior to the fictional accounts of my video game protagonist. I've got to go all the way back into the biblical book of Judges. So enter the animus with me to Judges chapter 3. We have the story of a man who was chosen by God to be an assassin. Yes, you heard that right. Before you gasp in shock at this notion or turn off this video because, I can't believe what he's saying, let's just read it. Judges chapter 3, verses 14 and 15. It says, the children of Israel served Eglon, king of Moab, 18 years. When the children of Israel cried out to the Lord, he raised up a deliverer for them, Ehud, the son of Gera, the Benjamite, a left-handed man. So the nation of Israel was trapped in bitter servitude to an evil king. They had been in this position for 18 long years due to their failure to follow a protective covenant they had agreed to with God. When they finally reached the point where they were prepared to ask for the Lord's help, he had an answer, an assassin named Ehud. But there's an interesting notation about this particular assassin. He's described as a man with a disabled right hand. Now you might say, no, it didn't say that. It just said he was left-handed. But that's not what the original Hebrew says. It doesn't say he was left-handed. It says, if you look at the original words, it says he was right hand disabled. You're surprised to hear that the chosen assassin to deliver the nation is a man with a disability. You shouldn't be. 2 Corinthians 12:9 tells us that God's strength is made most powerfully displayed in our weaknesses, meaning that the tools that can be used most perfectly in God's plans are those that are considered weak or maybe contemptible in the eyes of others. In 1 Corinthians 1:27 and 28, we see that God has chosen those things that are considered foolish in this world to show up the wise, those things perceived as weak to defeat the mighty. There's a powerful message that exists here for those who feel like maybe they can't be used by God. God can and has used everyone, like a man who was considered disabled, like Ehud. He used a man who was an accused murderer, Moses. Oh, not accused, he did it. He used a prostitute named Rahab. He used an adulterer, David. He even used a donkey. The donkey chose not to be credited by name in the story. To do his will, you'll see him in the story of Balaam. And he'll use us too. The choice is ours whether we will let him use us. But let's get back to Ehud. We find this hitman/deliverer in an act of subterfuge that would fit right in with the world of Assassin's Creed. He created a double-sided dagger that was small enough to be concealed, it was about 18 inches long, and he strapped it to his right thigh. Now, why is this significant? Well, it's because weapons in that time period were typically carried on the left side of the body because most soldiers were right-handed. When a search was performed for weapons before approaching the king, undoubtedly this would bypass their notice. And combined with his unassuming appearance because of his crippled hand, it would appear he didn't present much of a threat, making him a perfect assassin. So now we have his weapon of choice, and we have his method of concealment. So all that's left is how is he going to get the king alone long enough to fulfill this contract? Altier, Ezio, they have nothing on Ehud. The cover that he chose was to blend in with his countrymen who were traveling to offer the taxation tribute to the king. this would assure him pretty easy access to his target. The greedy king of Moab, a man who was, we'll just say he was very quaintly described as a very portly man in verse 16. I feel like maybe the Bible's just adding insult to injury there, but that detail isn't just to be offensive, it's actually very important. You'll see that momentarily. In Judges 3:16 through 19, it says, "Now Ehud had made himself a dagger. It was double-edged, a cubit in length, and it fastened under his clothes on his right thigh. He brought the tribute to Eglon, king of Moab." Now Eglon was a very fat man. That's what the Bible says, I didn't say. "And when he had finished presenting the tribute, he sent away the people who had carried it. But he himself turned back from the stone images that were at Gilgal, and Ehud said, 'I have a secret message for you, O king.' The king said, 'Keep silence,' and all who attended him went out from him." So here's the king. He's sitting in opulence, rich from the taxes that he's imposing on the countries he rules. And here's Ehud, a disabled representative of no particular notoriety. He bypasses any of the security measures that the king's security detail would have had, and he manages to get a weapon into the king's chambers. And he informs the king he has a secret message. And then the king's arrogance, failing to perceive that Ehud was a threat, he sends everyone out of the room. This ruse is perfect. The threat has went unperceived. Ehud informs the king that he's carrying a message from God. Oh, it's a message, all right. Now, word of warning, this gets very mature and very descriptive very quickly. It's in the Bible. Judges 3:20 through 26. "So Ehud came to him. The king was now sitting upstairs in his cool private chamber. Ehud said, 'I have a message from God to you.' And he arose from his seat. Then Ehud reached with his left hand. He took the dagger from his right thigh. He thrust it into his belly. The hilt went in after the blade, and the king's fat closed over the blade. Ehud did not draw the dagger out of his belly. And Ehud went out through the porch, shut the doors of the upper room behind him, and locked them. When he'd gone out, Eglon's servants came to look. To their surprise, the doors were locked. So they said he's probably attending to his needs in the cool chamber. So they waited until they were embarrassed. And he still had not opened the doors, so they took a key and opened them, and there he was, dead on the floor. But Ehud had escaped while they delayed and passed beyond the stone images. Unfortunately for the king, Ehud, when he said he was going to get to the point of his message, it was quite literal. When Ehud stood to hear the message, Ehud produced the dagger, and in a move that would make any of the characters from Assassin's Creed proud, drove it straight into his stomach. Very, very descriptive in this. Ehud's weapon, cleverly designed for penetration, and the blade disappears in the body, leaving no evidence for him to have to discard, and no messy cleanup. Sounds like an infomercial. So, let's not spend another moment of our lives wishing we were made differently than what we are, or believing any lies that we'll never be more than what we are now. We are perfectly designed for purposes that we won't understand until we accept the contract that God has for us. As the fictional characters from the Assassin's Creed series, as well as this real-life assassin, learned, their lives found fulfillment only when they accepted their purpose and chose to act on it. A life of true purpose and fulfillment for us is one decision away as well. So we get to the closing cinematic of Ehud's story. The final result of his efforts were a successful war with the Moabite army, leading the military for the Israelis to slaughtering 10,000 of these Moabite soldiers, and brought 80 years of peace to his people through that one singular act. And as we come full circle on this assassin story, we realize that God has a unique plan for each of our lives, not based on what we perceive as our weaknesses or disabilities, but on the opportunities those very weaknesses create for amazing accomplishments we could never imagine. Ehud went from a man considered disabled to an assassin enabled, all because he chose to be the weapon God had fashioned him to be. There was never anything wrong with him. There's not anything wrong with you either. Those areas that we may perceive as limitations are the reason our enemy underestimates us, and it creates an opportunity for Christ's victory through us. So for everyone who has ever felt marginalized, disqualified, or ostracized because of either a real or perceived deficiency, remember this: you were uniquely created to serve a purpose that only you can fulfill.